going on, everybody? Brian here with Blackburn in Tech. Be sure to like, subscribe. It helps the channel and it helps YouTube verify that you guys actually like this content. All right, so enough of that boring stuff. So we got the FortiGate setting here. We have it plugged in. I plugged it into to this computer that we're on currently, but it's kind of boring. It's not doing anything. It has no configuration. So how do we do anything at first? Well, let's go ahead and jump in to my computer, take a look and see what we have so far. All right, so I have a command prompt open, and I'm just wanting to see whether we have an IP address or not. I'm going to see if it hands out a DHCP address or not. IP. Sorry, trying to remember which platform I'm on. So, as we can see right here, we do have an address that it's giving us. So it tells me that the firewall is on 192.168.1.99, which is their default address. So if you don't have this address by default, maybe you have bought one of the higher end ones that don't have a DHCP turned on by default, that's what you'll want with a /24 subnet. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then that's cool. We'll go through that. So right here where the subnet is, that's what that is. You want your subnet to be the same thing. So let's go ahead and try and see if we can get to this through our favorite web browser of choice. And I will go ahead and use one of the browsers. I don't know if it's my favorite. So we're going to go to 192.168.1.99. As you can see, I've been here before just to make sure it loads. You might get a certificate error. It might tell you something like your browser's not private. That's because your web browser doesn't trust this yet. Your web browser's going, I don't know what this thing is, but we know what it is, so it's fine. So go ahead and click on however you bypass that. Most time it's advanced and continue. So our default password is just admin for our username, but the default password itself is just blank. So go ahead and click enter, and it's going to tell you need to change it because they don't want you just to have an open admin account. In Windows, it's like having a default, like having an administrator account, and Linux, it's like a root account. So you definitely want to have a good secure password. For this demonstration, I'm not going to do that. But typically you would want to have a good secure administrative password. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. And here it wants us to log in again because it had to go ahead and apply those changes. Okay. And so when you first get this thing booted up, you're going to see a bunch of stuff and you might get a little overwhelmed. It's okay. We're going to take this one bit at a time and just go over everything we can. Ultimately, the goal in this episode is to get us online. So let's go ahead and do that. So over in network, click on network interfaces. As you can see, we're on a 40F, which is kind of a smaller one. It's more for like small office, home office, small businesses. Maybe if you don't have that many people behind it, it's a great little box for that. If you're running obviously a major production, you might need more resources than what this one can handle. So if we look at it where it's green right now, it says up. So that tells me that I'm plugged in on this port, and I can verify on the port. It is on port 1 on the back of the firewall. That being said, it's in a little group here, so this is the address that it gave me, but my WAN port's not connected. I don't have anything plugged in. That's this connection right here. I did this one intentionally because I didn't want to confuse anybody. Your WAN is your wide area network. Typically, it will be a public IP address. You'll want to have your modem or into what is known as a bridge pass-through mode. So basically, it's going to just pass it to the firewall. You will see a 192.168.5 network on mine. That is because mine is behind another firewall, and I want to make sure that it's not the in one out on the internet. Typically, you don't want to do that. That's what's known as double natting, which can cause issues depending on what you're doing. Like especially if you have stuff coming in, people coming in, that will be more of an issue. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this one in. Okay, and we'll go ahead and refresh our page. We can see where the status is green, so right now it's reaching out for a DHCP address. By default, WAN ports are set up for DHCP on this particular model. So it should go ahead and get an address from my firewall. And we can see 192.168.5.7 is the address that it was given. If you have a static IP address, so your IP address doesn't change, it's not dynamic, you don't pay extra from your ISP typically. To get one of those, you will. So we'll just double click on here. Well, let's take a look at it. So let's just walk down it. So the interface name by default is just what it is and the MAC address. You can set an alias, so basically, so you know what it is. Maybe it's your Comcast, your Spectrum, whatever you want it to be. Bandwidth, you can go ahead and put that in here. Tags is an interesting one. So it really doesn't really do anything other than change what options you see. So where this one says WAN, that tells the firewall to display stuff that typically pertains to WAN networks. And we can go ahead and click on that. So WAN is your wide area network. LAN is your local area network. That's where you typically have your computers and your normal devices on. But DMZ is a weird one. That's typically like if you're hosting stuff externally on the internet, you want it separated from your actual network. That's typically what that is. And unassigned, it just says, hey, you know what you're doing. We'll give you all the options, and hopefully you know what you're doing. So if we come down, we can see mine is currently set to DHCP, but if I had a static address, I would set it to manual and just fill this out. I do not, so I'm going to set that back to DHCP on this one. It's okay for it to get a new address. It doesn't bother me. If I did have one, then yeah, I would go to the other option. You'll have that information by your ISP. We'll give that to you. It'll tell you what your default gateway is, all of the information you need. Just make sure you plug in all that information to the firewall so it knows what it needs. And as you can see, the main area that it needs is the network and the subnet, like what we just talked about. Because even on the wide area network, you'll need that. And then it'll need a default gateway. We'll explain that one here in a little bit. But we can see where my default gateway is 5.1 currently. So we can come down here and we'll see administrative access. Let me go ahead and... Sorry about that, hit the wrong button. You guys back on my screen, okay. So down here under administrative access, why is that having technical issues? Oh. All right, sorry about that. Hopefully we can take that out in editing and it should be fine. So administrative access, this is how do I want people to be able to see the firewall's administrative sides? Like currently pings are set up, okay? Can you ping it from the outside? That's normally fine. I personally want to open up management from the outside from this 172.16.5 network. Typically you won't do that unless you have a use case. Because this is internal in my own network, I'm going to do it just to make it a little bit easier on me for management of this. That being said, you can put in comments down here. That's pretty much the only thing you really want to change on here. If you have a static IP address where it said default gateway, you'll also need to give it a default route. Since mine's DHCP, it's going to automatically get one. But if I need to, I can put one in too. So over on the left-hand side, you'll see where it says static routes. Mine doesn't currently have one, but I would go ahead and put where it's all zeros. This is your static route, or this is saying anything I don't know about, send it, and you can say where you want to send it to. And if you needed to specify where it's going, you can do that here. I personally don't need one, so I'm going to click cancel on that. But if you have a static IP address, typically you'll need to have a static route to go along with it. The other portion of a firewall is we did the networking side, but now we have to do the security side. Because we have networking working, kind of redundant, but we have it working, but we haven't set up any permissions, right? So how do I know that it's actually working? Or does it have permission to, what can it do? What can this computer that's behind this firewall do? By default on a 40F, it has a default rule, and we'll go ahead and take a look at that. Come over here to policy and objects, IPv4 policy, because we are messing with IPv4. And there's one LAN to WAN rule already created. So if we double click on it, we can go ahead and just for me personally, it's easier to read it out loud. So from the incoming interface going out the WAN interface, any source going to any destination. So that means that everything's allowed right now out. So maybe I only wanted to allow pings out or DNS. You could do that. And then that would be where your destination rule would be. My source is any network that's behind this interface, but maybe I wanted to be, say, only this 192, this one computer is allowed to talk about on the internet. Here's where I would specify that. Actions would be either accept or deny. Pretty self-explanatory. NAT. Do I want this to be natted? Does it need to be natted? And if you're out on the internet, yes, you can't have a private IP address out on the internet, so it will need to be natted. Now, there's some use cases that you won't have to use NAT, and we'll go over those in other videos. And then right below that is our security settings. That what type of security do we want to be applied to this rule? We'll go into those in other videos as well. And then logging options. Do I want to just monitor security events, or do I want to log every event that every time this rule's hit, I want it to be monitored? I'm going to just leave it on the default right now, but actually, let me go ahead and do that. So as you can see, that rule is applied. So I should be able to get out on the internet right now with this computer. This one area that says implicit, I don't know. This is what is known as your implicit deny rule at the bottom. This is saying anything that doesn't match the above rules, tell it no. So by me having this rule up here saying, yeah, allow everything, if this rule did not exist, it would hit this rule, which says no, you can't go do it. So let's go ahead and check this and see if we can get out on the internet. I can get to Google, and I can get out on CNN, so I know I'm out on the internet. Typically, I like to do a couple different web pages to see. Maybe one area that you might notice that if you're having issues with that, check and see whether it's DNS. Does it mean, do you have a good DNS server that it's going out to? Most of the time, it will work just straight out the box like that. But if we come over here to DNS, we're going to take a look and see what DNS servers that they said we're using. We're using FortiGate servers, so that we're using their DNS servers. Maybe I can't reach those DNS servers. That's one option. But we'll definitely dig into this one a little bit deeper. But this is setting up a basic firewall rules and getting you online. Well, I hope this has been informative, and if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and click that like button, subscribe, smash it, whatever you want to do. That helps me create more content, as well as help YouTube be able to see that people actually enjoy this content. Thank you, and have a great day.